Admiral Kyle Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, the USS Defiant. He watched through the large windows as space itself seemed to tear open. Bright flashes of light appeared in the darkness, and then massive alien ships began to emerge from what looked like glowing wounds in reality. "Sir, we're counting over 3,000 enemy vessels," said Captain Lisa Grant, his tactical officer. Her voice was steady, but Kyle could hear the worry underneath. 3,000 ships was more than enough to destroy every human colony in this sector. The alien ships were beautiful in a terrifying way. They looked like they were made of crystal and metal, with parts that glowed blue and green. Each ship was at least twice the size of the biggest human warship. They moved in perfect formation, like a school of deadly fish swimming through space. "Open a channel," Kyle ordered. "Let's see what they want." The main screen flickered to life. An alien face appeared that made several crew members step back. It looked like a giant insect with multiple eyes that glowed red. Its skin was hard and dark, like armor. When it spoke, its voice was like the sound of grinding metal. "I am High Admiral Vextari of the Zephyrian Empire," the creature said. "You will surrender your species to Imperial rule, or we will destroy every human world. You have 72 hours to decide." Kyle looked at the alien for a long moment. Then he smiled. "We've made our decision already." "And what is that decision?" the alien asked. "Come and take it." The alien's multiple eyes flashed with anger. "You do not understand what you face, primitive ones. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Your species is nothing special." "We'll see about that," Kyle said. He nodded to Lisa, who cut the transmission. As soon as the screen went dark, Kyle turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to all colonies. Code Red. Tell them the Zephyrians are here." Across human space, the message spread like wildfire. On mining stations, cargo ships, and farming worlds, people who had been living normal lives suddenly became soldiers. They had been waiting for this day for years. Captain Ryan Bell received the message on his mining station called Meridian. The station was far from Earth, in a system that most people thought was empty except for rocks and metal. Ryan read the message twice, then walked to his command center. "Attention all hands," he announced over the station speakers. "This is it. The Zephyrians are here. You know what to do." All around the station, panels slid open to reveal weapon systems that shouldn't have existed on a mining platform. The cargo ships docked at the station suddenly showed their true nature as heavily armed warships disguised as merchant vessels. On the farming world of New Kansas, Lieutenant Sarah Murphy was working in what looked like a normal agricultural center. When the alert came in, she pressed a hidden button. The floor opened up, revealing an elevator that took her deep underground. Below the peaceful farms was a military command center that had been built in secret over many years. All defensive. "Systems online," she reported to her team. "The Zephyrians think we're just farmers. They're about to learn different." High above the planet, energy shields powered up. They were invisible to normal sensors, but they could stop any weapon this evening Zephyrians might use. The farms themselves were real, but they were also cover for one of the most advanced military bases in human space. Dr. Amanda Foster was in her laboratory on Earth when the alert came. She had been working on this day for 20 years. Her team had studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They had prepared for war while the rest of humanity lived in peace. "Release the new weapons to all fleets," she ordered, "and activate the shield generators on all colony worlds." Her assistant, a young man named Peter, looked worried. "Doctor, are you sure our technology is good enough?" "The Zephyrians have been fighting in space for thousands of years," Amanda smiled. "That's their problem. They've been fighting the same way for thousands of years. We've been preparing for them specifically." Back on the Defiant, Kyle watched as the Zephyrian fleet began to move. They were splitting into smaller groups, each one heading toward a different human colony. It was a standard attack pattern that had worked on hundreds of worlds. "They're doing exactly what we expected," Lisa said. "Each group has about 200 ships. They think that's enough to destroy any human world." "How long until they reach the outer colonies?" Kyle asked. 6 hours for the first group, 12 hours for the main force. Kyle nodded. "Send word to all fleet commanders. Phase 1 is go." Across human space, ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields and behind moons began to move. They weren't the big warships that the Zephyrians expected. They were smaller, faster, and much more dangerous than they looked. Commander Jake Sullivan was on one of these ships, the UES Falcon. It looked like a simple cargo hauler, but it was actually one of the most advanced warships humanity had ever built. Its weapons were hidden, its armor was disguised, and its engines were much more powerful than they appeared. "Contact in 30 minutes, his pilot reported. "We've got 50 Zephyrian ships coming our way." "Good odds," Jake said. "Remember, we want them to think we're just merchants trying to run away. Let them get close." The Zephyrian ships approached the human vessels with confidence. They had done this many times before. A few shots would disable the primitive human ships, and then they could move on to the real targets. But when they opened fire, something unexpected happened. The human ships didn't explode. Instead, energy shields flickered to life around them. The Zephyrian weapons, which could destroy most alien vessels in one shot, barely scratched the human defenses. "Impossible," muttered the Zephyrian captain. "How do they have shield technology?" Before he could figure out the answer, the human ships opened fire. Weapons that had been hidden in cargo holds and fake engine sections revealed themselves. The Zephyrian ships, built for fighting primitive species, were not ready for weapons. That matched their own technology. 3 Zephyrian vessels exploded in the first 10 seconds of combat. The others tried to retreat, but the human ships were faster than they looked. Within minutes, the entire Zephyrian squadron was destroyed. Similar battles were happening all across human space. Every time the Zephyrians expected easy victories, they found prepared enemies with advanced technology. Mining stations turned out to be heavily armed fortresses. Cargo ships revealed themselves as warships. Even passenger liners had hidden weapons and shields. On his flagship, High Admiral Vextari watched the reports come in with growing confusion. His forces were supposed to be overwhelming primitive humans. Instead, they were fighting an enemy that seemed to match their technology and exceed their tactics. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence said the humans were barely capable of spaceflight." His intelligence officer, a smaller insect-like creature, clicked nervously. "Sir, it appears our information was wrong. The humans have been hiding their true capabilities. No species develops this kind of technology in secret," Vextari said. "They must have help from another empire." But deep down, he was beginning to suspect the truth. The humans hadn't just been hiding their technology. They had been preparing for this exact war for years, maybe decades. They had studied Zephyrian tactics, built weapons to counter Zephyrian strengths, and planned for every possible scenario. The war that was supposed to last days was going to be much longer and much more dangerous than anyone in the Zephyrian Empire had imagined. The first real test came at the mining station Meridian. Captain Ryan Bell watched as a full Zephyrian battle group approached his station. 200 alien ships, each one designed to destroy entire fleets. The Zephyrians expected to find a helpless mining operation with maybe a few security guards. Instead, they found hell. "All weapon systems online," Ryan announced to his crew. "Remember, we want them to think we're just a mining station until the last possible moment." The Zephyrian ships moved closer, their weapons charging. They were following standard procedure for dealing with civilian targets. Get close, demand surrender, then destroy anything that resisted. Attention human station, came the transmission from the lead Zephyrian ship. You will surrender immediately, or be destroyed. Ryan waited until the alien ships were almost on top of the station. Then he pressed a button that changed everything. The mining station's outer hull split open like a flower blooming. Hidden weapon batteries emerged from what had looked like ore processors. The docking arms that moved cargo ships turned out to be massive railgun systems. Even the solar panels folded back to reveal missile launchers. Fire everything, Ryan ordered. The space around Meridian lit up with energy beams and explosions. The Zephyrian ships, caught completely off guard, tried to return fire. But their weapons hit energy shields that shouldn't have existed on a mining platform. Within minutes, 20 Zephyrian ships were destroyed. The others tried to pull back, but the station's weapons had incredible range. More ships exploded as they tried to retreat. "Sir, we're getting reports from the other mining stations," Ryan's communications officer reported. "They're all doing the same thing. The Zephyrians are losing ships everywhere." On the planet New Kansas, Lieutenant Sarah Murphy was coordinating the defense from her underground command center. The Zephyrians had sent a fleet to bombard the planet from orbit, expecting to find helpless farmers who would surrender quickly. Instead, they found one of the most heavily defended worlds in human space. "Enemy fleet is moving into bombardment. Position," her tactical officer reported. "They're charging their planetary destruction weapons." Sarah smiled. "Let them fire. I want to see their faces when nothing happens." The Zephyrian fleet opened fire with weapons that could melt the surface of a planet. Massive energy beams struck the atmosphere of New Kansas, enough firepower to kill every living thing on the world. But the beams hit something else first: energy. Shields that covered the entire planet flickered to life, absorbing the attack harmlessly. The Zephyrians had just used their most powerful weapons, and they hadn't even scratched the surface. "Now it's our turn," Sarah said. "Activate the surface-to-space missiles." All across New Kansas, what looked like grain silos and farm buildings opened up. Missile launchers that had been hidden under fake farms fired thousands of rockets into space. The Zephyrian ships, still trying to understand how their attack had failed, were caught completely unprepared. General Patricia Hayes was leading the ground assault on the industrial world. Forge. The Zephyrians had landed an army of their best soldiers, expecting to fight humans with primitive weapons. They were about to learn that human soldiers were just as dangerous as human technology. "Remember," Patricia told her Marines over the radio, "they think we're still using gunpowder and metal bullets. Let's show them what we've really been working on." The Zephyrian soldiers advanced in perfect formation. They were tall, armored creatures with weapons that could cut through steel. They had conquered ground forces on 100 worlds. This should have been easy. Instead, they met human Marines in powered armor that made them look like walking tanks. The Marines' weapons fired energy bolts that could punch through Zephyrian armor like paper. They moved faster than anything the aliens had seen, and their tactics were completely unpredictable. "Squad leaders, spread out," Patricia ordered. "Use the buildings for cover. Make them think there are more of us than there really are." The Marines scattered through the industrial complex, using the machinery and buildings to hide from the Zephyrian forces. But they weren't running away. They were setting up ambushes. The Zephyrians, used to fighting in open battles, didn't know how to deal with an enemy that attacked from the shadows. Marines would appear, fire a few shots, then disappear before the aliens could respond. It was driving the Zephyrian commanders crazy. "Sir, we're losing too many soldiers," reported a Zephyrian lieutenant. "The humans are using some kind of invisibility." "Technology. Impossible," the commander replied. They're just primitives with better hiding spots. But even as he said it, another squad of his soldiers was wiped out by Marines, who seemed to appear out of nowhere. The human soldiers weren't invisible. They were just better at fighting this kind of war. In space, Commander Alex Turner was leading a squadron of human fighter craft against a Zephyrian carrier group. The aliens expected to face primitive aircraft with chemical rockets and metal bullets. Instead, they found themselves fighting something that looked like it came from the future. "Stay in formation," Alex told his pilots. "Remember, their fighters are bigger than ours, but they're not faster." The human fighters looked small compared to the Zephyrian craft, but they were much more advanced. They could turn faster, accelerate quicker, and their weapons were just as powerful as anything the aliens had. The first wave of Zephyrian fighters attacked in their standard formation. They had used the same tactics for centuries, and they worked against every enemy they had faced. But the humans weren't like any enemy they had faced before. The human fighters split apart, each one taking a different path. They attacked from above, below, and from the sides all at once. The Zephyrians, trained to fight in straight lines, couldn't keep up. "What kind of flying is this?" demanded the Zephyrian squadron leader. "They're not following any known combat patterns." "That's the point," Alex said, even though the alien couldn't hear him. "We're not following your playbook." Within minutes, half the Zephyrian fighters were destroyed. The others tried to retreat, but the human pilots were relentless. They chased the alien fighters all the way back to their carrier, destroying them one by one. High Admiral Vexthari was receiving reports from battles all across human space. Every single one told the same story. The Zephyrians were losing. Not just losing battles, but losing badly. "This is impossible," he said to his staff. "How can a primitive species be defeating our forces?" His intelligence officer, Colonel Krythek, had been studying the human tactics. "Sir, I don't think they're primitive at all. Their technology matches ours in every way. Their tactics are completely different from anything we've seen, and they seem to know exactly how we fight." "Are you saying they've been studying us?" Vexthari asked. "I'm saying they've been preparing for us specifically," Krythek replied. "Every weapon they use is designed to counter our strengths. Every tactic they employ is meant to exploit our weaknesses." The truth was beginning to dawn on the Zephyrian leadership. The humans hadn't been caught off guard by this war. They had been ready for it. They had been planning for it. And they had been building weapons and training soldiers specifically to fight the Zephyrian Empire. "How long have they been preparing?" Vexthari asked. "Based on their technology and tactics, I would estimate at least 20 years, Krythek said. "Maybe longer." The High Admiral felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries of conquest. Fear. The humans hadn't just been hiding their technology. They had been setting a trap, and the entire Zephyrian Empire had walked right into it. "What do our casualty reports look like?" he asked quietly. "Bad, sir. We've lost over 400 ships in the first day of combat. Our ground forces are taking heavy losses, and our intelligence suggests that we haven't even seen their main forces yet." "What do you mean?" "The forces we're fighting appear to be colonial defense units and local militias. According to our intercepted communications, their main fleet is still stationed around Earth." Vexthari's multiple eyes widened. If the humans were winning battles with their reserve forces, what would happen when their real military arrived? For the first time in his long career, the High Admiral began to wonder if the Zephyrian Empire had made a terrible mistake. The war that was supposed to be over in days was turning into something much more dangerous. And the humans were just getting started. High Admiral Vexthari stood in the command center of his flagship, the Dominion. The massive ship was the pride of the Zephyrian fleet, large enough to hold a small city. But right now, it felt like a prison as reports of defeat poured in from every front. "Give me the numbers," he ordered his staff. Colonel Kryfek stepped forward with a data tablet. "Sir, in the first 3 days of combat, we have lost over 800 ships. Our ground forces have been pushed back on every world. They've landed on. The humans have retaken the agricultural world of New Kansas completely." Vextari's claws clicked against the metal floor. 800 ships. That was more than they had lost in their last 10 conquest campaigns combined. How is this possible? "We brought our standard conquest fleet. It should be more than enough to defeat any primitive species." "Sir, I don't think the humans are primitive," Kryfek said carefully. "Their technology appears to match ours in every way. In some areas, it might even be superior." "That's impossible. Our scouts reported that they were barely capable of space flight. Our scouts were wrong, sir. Or the humans were hiding their true capabilities." Across the bridge, other officers were reporting similar problems. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were launching counterattacks. There, fleets were striking at Zephyrian supply lines and communication centers. They were fighting like a species that had been preparing for this war for decades. Captain Nina Rodriguez commanded the heavy cruiser Hughes Valiant in the first major fleet engagement near the planet Kepler. The Zephyrians had brought 200 ships in their standard battle formation. It was a formation that had worked against every enemy they had ever faced. But the humans didn't fight like any enemy they had ever faced. "All ships, scatter formation," Nina ordered. "Don't let them predict our movements." The human fleet broke apart like a school of fish avoiding a predator. Each ship took a different path, attacking from unexpected angles. The Zephyrians, trained to fight in orderly lines, couldn't keep up with the chaos. "Target their command ship," Nina said. "Take out their leader, and the rest will panic." The human ships focused their fire on the Zephyrian flagship. Energy beams and missiles struck the alien vessel from every direction. Within minutes, it was destroyed, and the rest of the Zephyrian fleet was left without clear orders. "Sir, the humans are using some kind of new tactic," reported the surviving Zephyrian commander. "They don't follow any known patterns of space." "Combat. Explain," Vextari demanded over the communication channel. "They attack from all directions at once. They don't form battle lines. They don't try to protect their own ships. They just attack like animals, but they weren't animals. They were something much more dangerous. They were an enemy that had studied Zephyrian tactics and developed ways to counter them. Dr. Kevin Clark was the Empire's chief scientist, and he had been studying the human prisoners that had been captured during the fighting. What he found was disturbing. "High Admiral," he reported, "the humans are not like any species we have encountered before. They adapt to new situations faster than should be possible. They learn from every battle and change their tactics accordingly." "All species adapt," Vextari said. "That's how evolution works." "Not like this, sir. We captured a human pilot yesterday. Within hours of being imprisoned, he had figured out how to escape from a cell that has held prisoners for decades. We recaptured him, put him in a different cell, and he escaped again using a completely different method." Vextari felt a chill run down his armored spine. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that humans don't just adapt to survive. They adapt to win. Every challenge makes them stronger, not weaker." The implications were terrifying. If the humans could adapt that quickly, then every tactic the Zephyrians used would only work once. Every weapon would be countered. Every strategy would be defeated. Admiral Morrison was leading the counterattack from his flagship, the UES Defiant. His fleet had been striking at Zephyrian supply lines, disrupting their ability to resupply and reinforce their forces. "Sir, we've cut off 3 of their main supply routes," reported Captain Lisa Grant. "Their forward bases are starting to run low on fuel and ammunition. Good, Morrison said. That's how we win this war. We don't just beat them in battle. We make it impossible for them to fight. The humans were fighting a different kind of war than the Zephyrians expected. While the aliens focused on big fleet battles and planetary invasions, the humans were attacking everything that made war possible. They hit supply ships, communication centers, and repair facilities. They turned war into a complete assault on the enemy's ability to function. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Zephyrian flagship, the communications officer reported. Put it through, Morrison said. High Admiral Vexthari appeared on the screen. He looked tired and angry. Admiral Morrison, I request a meeting to discuss terms. Terms? Morrison smiled. What kind of terms? A negotiated end to this conflict. Surely we can find a way to resolve this without further bloodshed. You came to our space with 3,000 ships and demanded that we surrender, Morrison said. You threatened to destroy our worlds. And now you want to negotiate? I may have underestimated your species, Vexthari admitted. But continued fighting will only lead to more death on both sides. Morrison's expression hardened. You're right about one thing. There will be more death. But it won't be on both sides. The transmission ended, leaving Vexthari staring at a blank screen. The human admiral had just declared that the Zephyrians would be the only ones dying. And based on the battle so far, that might actually be true. Captain Steve Parker was one of the few humans who had been captured by the Zephyrians. He was being held on the flagship Dominion, where Zephyrian intelligence officers were trying to learn about human military capabilities. Tell us about your main fleet, demanded the interrogator. A large insect-like creature with multiple arms. Steve looked at the alien and smiled. What main fleet? Don't play games with us, human. We know you have more ships than what we've seen. You're fighting our main fleet right now, Steve said. What you see is what you get. The interrogator's eyes flashed with anger. Impossible. Our intelligence indicates that you have much larger forces stationed around your home world. Steve's smile got wider. Oh, those ships. Those aren't our main fleet. Those are just the home guard, defense forces. The ships we use to protect Earth while the real fleet is out here fighting you. The interrogator stepped back. You're lying. Am I? You've been fighting our colonial defense forces, mining station security, and local militias. Did you really think those were our best troops? The alien's multiple eyes widened. That's impossible. The forces we're fighting have technology that rivals our own. Yeah, that's our second-tier equipment. The good stuff is back on Earth. The interrogator rushed out of the room, leaving Steve alone. He had just told the truth, and the truth was more frightening than any lie could have been. Within hours, Steve's words had reached the highest levels of the Zephyrian command. The forces that had been winning battles against the Empire's conquest fleet were not even humanity's main military. They were reserves, militias, and local defense forces. If this is true, Vexthari said to his staff, then we are facing an enemy that is far more powerful than we imagined. Sir, Colonel Krythek said quietly, I recommend we contact the Imperial Council immediately. We need reinforcements. How many reinforcements? All of them, sir. If the humans have been hiding their true military strength, then we may need the entire Imperial fleet to defeat them. Vexthari looked out at the stars, where human ships were continuing to win battles against forces that should have been able to conquer them easily. For the first time in his long career, he began to wonder if the Zephyrian Empire had found an enemy they couldn't defeat. Send the message, he ordered. Request immediate deployment of the Grand Fleet. The Grand Fleet was the Empire's ultimate weapon. 10,000 ships commanded by the greatest military minds in Zephyrian history. It had never been defeated in battle, but then again, the Empire had never fought humans before. The news that humanity had been fighting with their reserve forces sent shockwaves through the Zephian Empire. High Admiral Vextari stood in his command center, reading reports that seemed impossible to believe. "Sir, we've confirmed the human prisoners' statements," Colonel Krythak reported. "The forces we've been fighting are indeed colonial defense units and local militias. Their main fleet has never left Earth's solar system." Vextari felt his confidence cracking. How can reserve forces be this effective against our conquest fleet? "Sir, I think we need to reconsider everything we know about human military organization," Krythek said. "They don't seem to have weak reserve forces. All of their military units appear to be highly trained and well-equipped." General Marcus Wright was commanding the defense of the core human worlds from his base on the planet Titan. His forces had been holding back the Zephyrian advance for weeks, and the aliens still didn't realize they were fighting training units. "Sir, the enemy is bringing up reinforcements," reported his aide, Lieutenant Jenny Adams. "They're trying to break through our lines with a massive assault." Marcus looked at the tactical display. The Zephyrians were throwing everything they had at his position. It was exactly what he had expected them to do: activate the reserve training units. Time to show these aliens what human recruits can do. The reserve training units were made up of soldiers who had just finished basic training. They were the newest, least experienced troops in the human military. But they had been trained specifically to fight Zephyrians, using tactics and weapons designed to counter alien advantages. "Remember," Marcus told his troops over the radio, "these aliens have been fighting the same way for thousands of years. They expect us to be afraid of them. Show them what humans do when we're not afraid." The battle that followed was unlike anything the Zephyrians had experienced. The human soldiers fought with a ferocity that seemed impossible for a species that had never fought a galactic war before. They used terrain to their advantage, coordinated their attacks perfectly, and never gave up even when surrounded. "Sir, our forces are being pushed back," reported a Zephyrian commander. "The human soldiers are fighting like veterans, not raw recruits." "They are veterans," Marcus said, monitoring the alien communications. "They've been training to fight you specifically for years." Commander Rachel Stone was aboard the reconnaissance vessel UES Pathfinder, intercepting Zephyrian communications. What she heard was disturbing the alien leadership more and more with each passing day. "Admiral Morrison," she reported, "the Zephyrians are starting to panic. They're requesting reinforcements from their home territories." "What kind of reinforcements?" Morrison asked. "Everything, sir. They're calling for their grand fleet. That's 10,000 ships, their best commanders, and their most advanced technology." Morrison whistled. 10,000 ships. That's more than we've ever faced at once. "Sir, there's something else. They're also trying to contact other species that have encountered humans before. They want to know if anyone else has seen our military in action. And what are they finding?" "That's the interesting part, sir. Every other species has only met our exploration ships, science vessels, and merchant fleets. No one has ever seen a human military unit in combat before this war." Morrison smiled. "Of course not. We've been very careful about that." The Zephyrian Intelligence Service was discovering the same thing. Senior Analyst Krythek had been studying human contact records from dozens of species. The pattern was always the same. "High Admiral," he reported, "humans have had contact with 47 different species over the past century. In every case, they appeared as peaceful explorers, traders, or scientists. Not once has anyone reported seeing human military vessels." "That's impossible," Vextari said. "Every species has military forces. They can't hide them completely." "Sir, I think that's exactly what they did. They kept their military hidden while they studied everyone else's. They learned our tactics, our weapons, our weaknesses, and they prepared for war while appearing to be peaceful." The implications. were staggering. While the Zephyrians had been conquering worlds and showing their strength, the humans had been quietly preparing for the day when someone would try to conquer them. They had turned their apparent weakness into a weapon. "How long have they been preparing?" Vexthari asked. "Based on their technology and tactics, I estimate at least 50 years. Maybe longer. 50 years of secret preparation. 50 years of studying alien species and developing countermeasures. 50 years of building weapons and training soldiers for a war that everyone thought would never come. Captain Danny Foster was commanding the first Earth Defense Fleet vessel to enter the combat zone. The UE's Thunderstorm was a next generation battleship that had been built in secret shipyards around Earth. It was larger, more powerful, and more advanced than anything the colonists had been using. "Sir, we're detecting massive Zephyrian formations ahead," reported his tactical officer. "They're bringing everything they have left." "Good," Danny said. "Time to show them what our real ships can do." The Thunderstorm engaged the Zephyrian fleet with weapons that made the colonial defense systems look like toys. Energy beams that could slice through multiple ships at once. Missiles that could track targets across entire star systems. Shields that could absorb anything the aliens could throw at them. "Sir, the Zephyrian fleet is breaking apart," his tactical officer reported. "They're trying to retreat." "Don't let them," Danny ordered. "We want word of this to get back to their command. Let them see what happens when they face our real military." The battle was over in minutes. The Zephyrian fleet, which had been confident of victory, was completely destroyed. Only a few ships escaped, and they carried with them the terrifying news that the humans had technology that was far beyond anything they had seen before. High Admiral Vexthari received the report with growing despair. The humans had been holding back their best ships, their best weapons, and their best soldiers. Everything the Zephyrians had been fighting was just a warm-up for what was coming. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Imperial Council," his communications officer reported. "The Grand Fleet is being deployed. They'll be here in 2 days." 2 days, Vexthari muttered. "Will we last that long?" "Sir, there's something else. The humans are requesting a meeting." Vexthari looked up in surprise. "A meeting? What kind of meeting?" "They want to discuss terms for ending the war." "Terms? What terms could they possibly offer?" The transmission came through a few minutes later. Admiral Morrison appeared on the screen, looking calm and confident. "Hi, Admiral Vexthari," he said. "I think it's time we had a serious conversation. What do you want to discuss?" Vexthari asked, "Your surrender." The alien's multiple eyes flashed with anger. "My surrender? You're the ones who should be surrendering. Our Grand Fleet will be here soon." Morrison smiled. "Your Grand Fleet. 10,000 ships. Your best commanders. Your most advanced technology." "Exactly. Once they arrive, this war will be over." "You're right," Morrison said. "It will be over, but not the way you think." "What do you mean?" "Admiral, you've been fighting our colonial defense forces and local militias. You've seen some of our reserve units and training companies. You've encountered exactly one ship from our actual fleet." Vexthari felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that when your Grand Fleet arrives, they're going to meet our real military for the first time. And Admiral, you have no idea what that means." The transmission ended, leaving Vexthari staring at a blank screen. The human's words echoed in his mind. They had been fighting reserves and militias, training units and local defense forces. What would happen when they faced the human military that had been preparing for this war for decades? For the first time in his long career, High Admiral Vexthari began to wonder if the Zephyrian Empire had made a mistake that would destroy them all. The arrival of the Zephyrian Grand Fleet was meant to be the moment when the Empire showed its true power. 10,000 ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their crystalline hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. High Admiral Vexthari stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The massive vessel was 3 times larger than his previous ship, equipped with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Around him, the greatest military minds in Zephyrian history commanded ships that had never known defeat. "Sir, we're detecting the human fleet," reported his tactical officer. "They're moving to intercept us." "How many ships?" Vexthari asked. "Approximately 500 vessels, sir." Vexthari felt a moment of relief. 500 ships against 10,000. Even if the humans had better technology, they were still outnumbered 20 to 1. Prepare for battle. Today, we end this war. But as the human fleet came into sensor range, something became clear that made every Zephyrian officer step back in shock. The human ships were massive. Each one was larger than the biggest Zephyrian vessel. The lead ship was so enormous that it registered as a small moon on their sensors. Admiral Christine Baker stood on the bridge of the UE Sovereign, watching the Zephyrian fleet with calm interest. The ship around her was the culmination of 50 years of secret human military development. It was not just a battleship. It was a mobile fortress that could manufacture its own weapons, repair itself, and coordinate entire fleets. "Ma'am, the aliens are hailing us," reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Tim Brown. "Put them through," Christine said. "Hi." Admiral Vexthari appeared on the screen. He looked smaller and more nervous than he had before. "Admiral Baker, I am High Admiral Vexthari of the Zephyrian Grand Fleet. I demand your immediate surrender." Christine smiled. "Admiral, I think you misunderstand the situation. You're not in a position to demand anything. I have 10,000 ships," Vexthari said. "You have 500. "You have 10,000 ships," Christine agreed. "But Admiral, you're not fighting the same humans anymore." Before Vexthari could respond, the human fleet began to change. The ships spread out into a formation that seemed impossible. They moved with perfect coordination, each vessel taking a position that maximized their combined firepower while minimizing their exposure to enemy weapons. "Sir, their formation is unlike anything in our tactical databases," reported the Zephyrian tactical officer. "Our computer systems can't predict their movements." "Then we'll destroy them with brute force," Vexthari ordered. "All ships, open fire." The Zephyrian Grand Fleet unleashed a barrage of energy that could have destroyed entire planets. Thousands of weapons fired at once, creating a wall of destruction that should have vaporized the human fleet. Instead, the energy beams struck shields that absorbed the attack without even flickering. The human ships sat in space, completely undamaged, as if the most powerful weapons in the galaxy were nothing more than flashlights. "Impossible," Vexthari whispered. "Our weapons should have destroyed them." "Sir, the human ships are returning fire," his tactical officer reported. The human fleet opened fire with weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Energy beams that curved around obstacles to strike their targets. Missiles that appeared and disappeared, traveling through folded space. Weapons that didn't just destroy ships, but erased them from existence. Within seconds, 100 Zephyrian vessels were gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, but simply gone as if they had never existed. "What kind of weapons are those?" Vexthari demanded. "Sir, I don't know. They're using technology we've never seen before." Commander Tony Mitchell was leading the first wave of human fighters from the carrier U.E.'s Enterprise. His squadron was equipped with quantum tunneling drives that allowed them to appear and disappear at will. The Zephyrian fighters, built for conventional space combat, had no defense against enemies that could attack from any direction. Remember, Tony told his pilots. "We want to capture some of their ships intact. Don't destroy everything." The human fighters moved through the battle like ghosts. They would appear next to a Zephyrian ship, fire a few shots, then vanish before the aliens could respond. Zephyrian pilots found themselves fighting enemies they couldn't see, couldn't track, and couldn't hit. "Sir, we're losing fighters faster than we can launch them," reported the Zephyrian carrier commander. "The human pilots are using some kind of teleportation technology. All fighters return to base," Vexthari ordered. "We'll fight this battle with capital ships only." But the capital ships weren't doing any better. The human fleet was systematically destroying the Zephyrian vessels with weapons that seemed to violate everything the aliens knew about physics. Ships that took direct hits from planet-killing weapons would simply absorb the energy and keep fighting. Dr. Helen Cruz was aboard the research vessel U.E.'s Discovery, demonstrating humanity's ultimate weapon to the Zephyrian leadership. She had been waiting for this moment for decades. "Admiral Baker," she reported, "the stellar manipulation device is ready for demonstration." "Proceed, Doctor," Christine replied. The Discovery fired a single beam at the nearest star. The beam itself was invisible, but its effects were immediate. The star began to dim, its light fading as the human weapon drew energy from it. "Sir, the star is losing power," reported the Zephyrian science officer. "The humans are doing something to it." Vexthari watched in horror as the star that had shone for billions of years began to fade. "They're controlling a star. How is that possible?" "Sir, if they can control stars, they can destroy entire solar systems," his science officer said. "Our planets would be defenseless." The message was clear. Humanity didn't just have better ships and weapons. They had technology that could manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. They could turn stars into weapons, bend space and time, and fight wars on a scale that the Zephyrians had never imagined. "Sir, we're down to 4,000 ships," reported the tactical officer. "The humans haven't lost a single vessel." 4,000 ships. In less than an hour, the humans had destroyed more than half of the Grand Fleet without taking any damage. Themselves, the battle wasn't just a defeat. It was a demonstration of absolute superiority. "Admiral Vexthari," came Admiral Baker's voice over the communication system. "I think it's time we ended this. What do you want?" Vexthari asked quietly. "Your unconditional surrender. The immediate withdrawal of all Zephyrian forces from human space. And the liberation of every world your empire has conquered. And if I refuse, Ben will demonstrate what happens when humans stop holding back." Vexthari looked around his bridge at the faces of his officers. They were the best military minds in the empire, and they all looked terrified. They had brought everything they had, and it wasn't enough. It wasn't even close to enough. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "we have no choice. If we keep fighting, they'll destroy us all." Vexthari closed his multiple eyes. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 1,000 worlds. They had never been defeated in battle. But they had never fought humans before. "I surrender," he said. The words echoed across the communication channels of both fleets. The war was over. The Zephyrian Empire, which had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, had been defeated by a species that most people thought was primitive. "Admiral Baker," Vexthari said, "may I ask you something?" "Of course." "How long have you been preparing for this war?" Christine smiled. "Admiral, we've been preparing for this war since the day we first learned that other species existed. We knew that someday someone would try to conquer us. We decided to be ready." "And the forces we fought in the colonies?" "Training exercises. We wanted to see how you fought before we committed our real military." Vexthari felt a chill run down his spine. The humans had been testing them, learning from them, preparing for this exact moment. "What happens now?" "Now you go home and tell Your people that the galaxy has new rules. No more conquest. No more slavery. No more empires built on the suffering of others. And if someone violates these rules, Christine's smile faded. Then they'll learn what happens when humans stop being polite. The Zephyrian Grand Fleet limped home, carrying news that would shake the galaxy to its core. Humanity had revealed itself as the dominant military power in known space. More importantly, they had shown that they were willing to use that power to protect others. The age of galactic empires was over. The age of human protection had begun.